What is up, all my Nexus family? It is your host, Dr. Daniel Kimbley, and you are tuned into another episode of the Nexus Podcast. And on this week's episode of the podcast, I was on an amazing weekend with Heather and Coco, and one of the things we did is we spent some time at this place called Funbox. And Funbox is like this 25,000 square foot outdoor bounce house facility. So it's literally just like a bounce house that you would see at a kid's birthday party, except for it's 25,000 square feet. And there are like obstacle courses, there are a bunch of slides, there are climbing walls, there's just a bunch of different stuff that you can do inside of this bounce house. And one of the things that stood out to Heather and I is we were kind of spending some time there, and we got passes for this weekend, so we were in and out and romping, and like the sun's beating down on us and we're super sweaty. And I had this realization when we got to the end of this bounce house experience is that one of the things that Heather and I both noticed is that there were a lot of parents that brought their kids, and we're talking kids like Coco's age. I'm not talking about like middle schoolers. I'm talking about kids who are younger, like Coco's age, who they just kind of dropped off at the bounce house. And then like there was one parent that was reading a book and the husband was on their cell phone. Another dad like brought his laptop and he just dropped his kids off to let them run. And he's like literally sitting there working on his laptop on a Friday afternoon. And it struck me that there's a question that one of my mentors and someone who I learned from, someone who I learned a lot about neurodevelopmental biology when we talk about kids specifically and how brain develops in kids. And he asked a simple question at one of his seminars, and he said, like, when's the last time that you actually played with your kids? When's the last time that you spent a significant amount of time like modeling for your kids exactly how they should be when it comes to activity levels? Because there's so many times where I hear parents who are like, you know, all my kid wants to do is play video games, or I can't get him off the cell phone, or I can't get him off the iPad. And the question comes up time and time again is like, well, what are you modeling to them? And when's the last time that you were up and active so they saw it in a way that your kids are like, or any kids are like, oh, that's what we're supposed to do. And I know for me, and like this isn't about me, the reason I'm sharing this with you is because when I think about brain development, when I think about how our kids show up in life and how our kids will continue to show up later, oftentimes what I see is parents don't ever put the connection together of like, our kids are a reflection of us. So if my daughter is quick to snap and yell at me and tell me no and tell me stop it, then she had to learn that language and that behavior from somewhere. And I can tell you that my daughter doesn't watch television, so she wasn't learning it from Coco Lemon and a Bluey and Blippy. She's literally learning it from what we say to her and what we don't say to her. And so the same thing is true when we look about activity level in kiddos. The reason I bring it up is because I think it's so important is when I look at the activity level of some of these kids, and like Heather and I are literally the only parents in this bounce house, like pouring sweat, climbing on the walls, going down the slide, doing all the stuff, having a blast with Coco. And again, it's not about us. Like I'm not saying this to brag about us, but I'm just saying like looking around, we wonder why there are so many kids with developmental issues. We know that movement of the joints of the spine feeds the right side of the brain, and that helps with development. That's why the first developmental milestone in kiddos is movement of the neck. And so if we see a lack of that, or an inability to do that, or it happens later, then every set of development along the way is going to be less than. And then we get into kiddos who have difficulty interacting with other kids, or they're shy and they're closed off and all these things. And it literally has to do with how the right side of the brain is developing, which again is why my mentor asked this question and why I thought of it and why I wanted to bring it to you on this episode, because this question of like, when's the last time that you played with your kids? When's the last time that you interacted with your kids? When's the last time that you connected with your kids? Because we know that whatever we model for our kids is how they are going to show up in the world on some level. And so one of the things that I often see are like parents who, and again, this is no judgment, I'm just sharing like, what does the neuroscience say? How are our babies supposed to develop? And one of the things that I often see is like parents who have the snoo and the things that like bounce a babe and all the electronic stuff, and we have Bluetooth diapers that tell us when our kid's diaper's dirty. It's like, that takes away the connection that mom and dad have with the babe. Like if the babe's not getting rocked to sleep by mom and dad, like they're only going to be connected to technology, and then we wonder why they don't want to ever get off their phones later, or why they don't want to connect with humans later, because they never had an opportunity to do it in the first place. And the same is true is like, it's so funny, I'm walking with my daughter today, I take her on a walk with me almost every single morning, and the reason I do it, and Coco's to the point where she's like, Daddy, we got to get our steps in today. She's like, I'm so glad I'm getting my steps in early today. And like, some people would look at it and be like, oh, that's so unhealthy. Like, you're teaching your kid these habits about being active and staying fit and thinking about food and things like that. But the reality of it is like, I would much rather have that than a kid who grows up in a diseased lifestyle. I would much rather have that than a kid in middle school who's morbidly obese, who has an eating disorder, and they're eating just crap and filling their stuff with their brains. That's literally going to decrease their chances of being successful later in life. And so I bring this to you for one reason and one reason only, because the question comes up time and time and time again. It's like, how are you and what are you modeling to your kids? What are you modeling to the people that you're living around? How are you showing up day in and day out, outside or inside of your life? Like, what are you doing to model the exact lifestyle that to your kids that you want them to have? Like, so many times I see moms who will scream at their kids, stop it, don't do that, and they yell at them, and then the kiddo does the exact same thing and mom goes, I don't know where they get it from. And I'm like, yeah, I know where they get it from. They get it from you. There's a book called The Conscious Parent. And in The Conscious Parent, literally the whole premise of the book is that our kids are there to teach us lessons about life, to teach us things about ourselves that we did not know. And what I know and what this book poses is that our kids are a direct reflection of how we show up to them on a daily basis, how we show up inside of our lives, how we show up in our physical bodies, how we show up with the food that we eat, how we show up with our relationships, and how we connect to the other people around us. Like, our kids are constantly watching, and the number one place that they learn stuff is through us. And if we take us out of the equation, there's only one place that our children have to learn how to be acceptable, appropriate, normal, regulatory human beings, and that is through the computers and the iPads and the phones and social media and YouTube. And this is what I know, is that I would much rather raise my daughter myself than have technology raise her. I would much rather teach my daughter how to have willpower than put an iPad in front of her that we know weakens the front part of her brain, that we know weakens her ability to make decisions, that we know weakens her willpower, that we know weakens her connection and her faith and her optimism and her hope and her joy and her ability to regulate her emotions and her ability to regulate her stress sympathetic nervous system and her rest and digest or healing branch of her nervous system. And like, every time we do these things, every time kids get disconnected from us, or they see us do things that disconnect us from them, they're going to want to model that behavior. So my friends, I ask a simple question. The question is like, where inside of your life are you modeling behaviors for your kids that you are unaware of? Like, I am very aware that there are things that I say and things that I do. I'm not saying I'm a perfect parent by any means, but I see it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I say those things to Coco. I need to change my language. I need to change the way I act. I need to change the way I speak. I need to change the way I show up. I literally had a moment today where I was listening to a boxer on my cell phone. This just happened just a few minutes ago. And I said, Coco, I need you to stop talking to me right now so that I can listen to this boxer on my cell phone. And guess what? In that moment, I literally realized that I'm modeling an exact behavior to her that is inappropriate and unacceptable. So after the fact, when I realized it, I literally stopped. I said, Coco, I'm so sorry. I should not have acted that way. And I just called myself out because she's learning from me. She's learning those interactions like every single day, all the time, but it takes us being consciously aware. It takes us being people who are going to model the exact behavior we want to have our kids to have. And so like, so many times I see parents who are like, well, my kid doesn't want to do this and they don't want to do this and they don't want to do this. And I'm like, well, do you do those things? Like, if you don't do them and you don't model them for the kids, then how do you expect them to do those things? Like, it's just not possible. And so my friends, I just urge you to level yourself up. Like, look inside of your life. It's like, where could you be a better role model? Where could you be a better parent? Where could your kid look up to you in just a little bit different way? Because I guarantee you one thing, is that they are watching and they are listening and they are learning more than anything else from you. And if you are not present, if you are not with them, if you are not connected to them, then they're going to go straight to social media. They're going to go straight to YouTube. They're going to go to TV. They're going to go to other places to learn from. And I guarantee you, what it does is not only do we set up a generation of kids who are learning from somewhere else that's scripted on exactly how we want our kids to be, but they're also doing a detriment to the front part of their brain, the part of their brain that's responsible for success. And this is why I get so passionate about chiropractic care. This is why I get so passionate about bringing this message to you. Why? Not to tell you that you're a bad parent. I have things that I'm terrible at. I understand that. What I'm here to share with you is this simple concept that like there is a way that we can set up a future generation of kids to absolutely crush it in every single aspect of life, to lead the country one day in a way that we would want it to be led and be proud of where it's led. And right now, I'm not proud of it, but guess what? Those kids were raised by somebody, and that's how they learned how to be. And so the same thing is true with our kiddos. Like, one of the things I'm so passionate about is setting up a new healthy generation of kids to build our kingdom, because one day they're going to have to make decisions. One day they're going to have to take care of us. And I know for me and my daughter, I want her to be the clearest, most healthiest, most highly expressive, function at 100% version of herself that she can possibly be. And we do that through, 1, the decisions we make, 2, the way that we model our behaviors to our kiddos, and 3, through making sure that her brain and her nervous system is on fire through the chiropractic care that we provide. My friends, I love you and I appreciate you, and I will come at you again next week. Peace.